Willie, great to have you here today. Why don't you take a moment and just tell us where you serve? What's your ministry, where you serve, and how long you've been there?
I serve at the Bread of Life Mission downtown in Pioneer Square. Been there going on 9 years. And
How'd you come there?
well, I transitioned from another ministry to there. I was asked to come serve as a program manager, and then there was a transition with the CEO, and then I was asked by the board of directors to serve in this capacity.
And there's a level of fulfillment, I think, probably serving in that area that you've experienced. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely, without
Yeah.
a doubt, without a doubt. Yeah.
Now, from where you started in life, for you to end up serving at the Bread of Life Mission in Seattle, I mean, that's quite a journey. So let's go way back to the beginning. Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
Born in Cleveland, Ohio, grew up in Youngstown, Ohio. My father passed away, I was at the age of 13. My mother's a hardworking lady, was a nurse at the hospital there in Youngstown, and then she had the opportunity to better for the family and begin working at General Motors. We called it Generous Motors because it was very generous at that time. And so she retired after 35 years there. So I have two other siblings.
Your life kind of began to go sideways at some point.
Yes.
Tell us about that. How did that happen?
Well, you know, mom's raising 3 kids, working hard every day to make a living and provision for the family, and then I just sort of decided to make a turn in my life because I wanted to be like some of my friends I was hanging out with, and so from that it developed in some unfortunate situations as far as drugs.
Now, how old are you at this point?
At this point, I'm probably 18, about 17, 18 years of age.
Okay, so 4 years or so after your dad passes away, your mom's working full time.
Yeah.
And you're kind of drawing some values from your friends and taking your life cues from your friends.
Even though we were not raised in a Christian home, my mother had good values.
Yeah, still had morals.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
So what happened to you? You start going down this road, and what happened?
Well, I started going down the road because I thought I could control it. Started drinking a little bit, and the drinking, I graduated from drinking to the other things that led me down to pills and marijuana, and then eventually, you know, everyone, when you become addicted, you have a drug of choice. Unfortunately, my drug of choice was heroin, and that was just bad for me. It was just bad news, which led me to a life of crime. Unfortunately, led me to a mental hospital because I thought I was losing my mind and just couldn't control myself, and took me further than I wanted to go. Well, this is what I need to do to maintain my habit.
So would crime like become a regular part
Exactly.
of your life?
Exactly.
So like how many times a week would you commit a crime like that?
Oh, probably, well, not only that type of crime, but other crimes.
Right.
And so probably 5 times a week.
Wow.
You had to maintain that
It's like
habit.
your regular job.
Yeah, exactly. You had to maintain the habit, and there's only one, if you're not working to maintain it, you're doing other things that,
Did you get caught?
oh, several times.
What happened?
Went to jail, did time in the city jail, did time in the county jail.
So how many times were you in jail?
Oh, probably maybe 30.
30 times?
About 30, yeah. No, just unfortunately about 30 times.
Okay, so how long is this season of your life where you're stealing, you're taking drugs, being arrested, finding yourself in jail? This obviously goes on for years.
It does, but that went on for about a good 4 years, about 4 years. And then the stakes begin to raise. The stakes rise. And so from going to now actually breaking in places, homes,
Burglary now.
doing those type of things, to now that I have the drugs and I'm selling drugs. So and everything, the stakes become higher. It was dealing.
Yeah,
Yes.
and now you're dealing heroin?
Dealing heroin.
Yeah. So how long did you do that?
A couple years.
At some point, you're headed down the wrong road. Did you ever serve extended sentences in prison?
I did.
Tell me about that.
What happened was I have to go back a little bit if I could. So after going through halfway houses, which was treatments at that time, after being on methadone that was a detox for heroin, now it's for chronic back pain and other issues. After going through all that, I was admitted into a mental hospital, and I'd overdosed on heroin 4 times. In a mental hospital, my grandmother asked her pastor, Baptist pastor, would she come see her boy? And he came to see me and told me about Christ, and I just told him, I said, man, I'm too bad. I said, I wrecked people's lives. I sold drugs.
So it wasn't that you didn't believe. You didn't think you qualified.
Yeah, exactly. I believe there was a God. I was not atheist. I believe there was a God, wasn't serving him. And he talked with me. He said, I want you to look, he called me Bill, when you get out, I want you to look me up. And I was released from the mental hospital. And the day I was released from the hospital, I went out and got high again and started over. And then I went to my grandmother's house and said, I can't stop. I can't stop. She said, what do you want me to do? She prayed for me. And she took me back to the mental hospital again. So I go there. So the first time there, they give me methadone. Well, I knew what methadone was all about. Now they give me Thorazine. And I didn't know anything about Thorazine, but if that was going to help me, I said, okay, fine. And so I'm just totally drugged out on this medication, and I'm there, and I just lose control of things, walking, shuffling, and so forth and so on, and just being medicated up, and really didn't really care about life.
You just feel kind of numb.
And then when I was released the second time, the pastor called my mother's house. I was going out the house, and my mother would call me Billy. She said, Billy, telephone. I said, well, whoever it is, tell me I'll call him back. I have something to do. She said, no, you come to this phone. So I debated back. So, okay. And then there was the pastor who was on the phone, and he asked me a few questions, and he told me about a program. I said, okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the program for 2 weeks to please my mother and grandmother. And then I'm
get this preacher off your back.
I tried.
Right.
That's it. I tried.
Right.
And then I found from that program, that's when I came to know Christ.
So tell me about that. How did that happen, that Jesus found you in the middle of this program?
I was in a program, it was a program for men 18 and older, Christian discipleship residential program. And being there, you get up at a certain time, 6 a.m. in the morning, you had duties you had to do, et cetera. And so in the process, in the devotional time, they would talk about Christ. And so I just went to a quiet space, and because I'd hear them talk about how to receive Christ. And I asked Christ to come in my heart, and I thought, he didn't come in, I didn't feel any different. I shared that with him, I didn't feel any different. And I said, I'm ready to go back to Youngstown. And the preacher called, or I wanted to call him. He said, Bill, if you just give me, I think it was on a Friday. He said, if you give me Wednesday of next week, I'll come up. No questions asked. I'll come up and get you, and we'll just come back to Youngstown. I said, fine. And at that particular time, I'll never forget, I was ready for him to pick me up. I find myself in a Foursquare church in Cleveland, Ohio on a Wednesday night. And so, and mindset was, okay, I'm going to church, but I'm going back to Youngstown this evening when the pastor comes. And I found myself clapping my hands to the songs.
Really?
And I checked myself, and I said, this is strange. And so
you surprised yourself.
I surprised myself.
Getting involved there.
And so, and I believe that was the Holy Spirit just giving me the confirmation that, the Lord's with you. Because I accepted the Lord, but I'm looking to feel a little different, act a little different. I just sensed that right away, and I just felt a sense of rejection, which was a rejection.
Right.
And so then I went back to the program that night. They took all of us back, and they told me the pastor came up and he left, and so obviously God ministered his heart, let him know everything was going to be right.
It's an interesting part of your story there, because some people come to Christ and they have a salvation experience, and they have a tremendous amount of emotion. There's a major shift in their life, and they know they've encountered God. But for you, it sounds like you really took this by faith, and it wasn't until you were worshiping a little bit later that you realized, okay, I'm not alone. Jesus is in my life, and it's starting to take root. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, you came to Christ. Tell me when you were filled with the Spirit.
Probably, they had a little Bible study that we'd go to a doctor's house, and he had a Bible study for this group in the program. And there was a group of ladies, believers, that prayed for us young guys to be filled with the Spirit. And we baptized in the Holy Spirit that night.
Right.
Yeah.
And you experienced that. You're speaking in tongues. Never had that happen before.
Never had it happen before.
All that is happening right there.
All this happening.
I'm happy to hear you drill down about what it means to be filled with the Spirit, because there's a lot of times that other leaders, ministers, sometimes we're almost binarians instead of Trinitarians. And we cannot have a focused mission. And I know you work in the mission in Seattle, but I mean the mission of the gospel. We can't have the mission of the gospel without the power of the gospel. So Acts 1:8 and Acts 2:4 have got to go together. And you know that very well in your level of ministry, especially working where you're at in the mission in downtown.
And what happened from there was I was there in this program for 4 months. It was a 9-month program. I was there 4 months. came out of Bible study one day at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, never forget it. The assistant director said, "Well, I need to talk to you." And he proceeded to tell me, he said, "I have some bad news." Well, at that time, I accepted Christ, I'm filled with the Spirit. You know, what could be bad? I'm thinking someone in my family passed away. He said, "We got word from Cleveland narcotics agents that you have been secretly indicted by the grand jury for 14 counts of selling heroin, cocaine, and morphine." And at that particular time, everything just fell out of me like, wow, you know. And the reason why they knew where I was at, because I had to get the traveler's permit to go leave Youngstown to go to Cleveland, so that the authorities knew exactly where I was at. And so I had a choice to make. That was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and they prayed with me, encouraged me, gave me scripture, and they had to turn me in the next day at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I had a long day and evening to really think about, do I want to turn myself in or do I want to run? And it was just like the peace of God came over me, and I realized that I'm just going to face whatever I need to face. But I'd figured God out in the meantime. I said, okay, God's going to touch the judge's heart. The judge is going to say, go back and complete the program, and everything's going to be good. It didn't work that way.
So you're filled with the Spirit. You know Jesus is with you. You make the decision. You're going to turn yourself in. Then what happens?
I was extradited from Cleveland back to Youngstown, because that's where I sold the drugs at. I was thinking that God's going to touch the judge's heart, and it wasn't working out like I thought it was going to work out, because I soon found out that his ways are not our ways, his thoughts are not our thoughts. And so
how much time did you end up serving?
18 months. 18 months. I served 18 months.
And so now you're out of prison after 18 months. Then what happens?
Okay. There was a minister from a Mennonite church that would visit the prisons, and he worked for a Mennonite church. They had a outreach ministry called Straight Up, and so he wanted me to work with them, and I worked with him. And I was he was in Cleveland, in the inner city of Cleveland, where they had the riots back in the day, and I was working there, and it was a humbling experience, because now we're looking at 1977, 76, somewhere around there, and so ended up paying me $25 a week, and room and board $25 a week, and I had to prepare my own food, and I'm not a good cook even to this day, and so, but God was in the process.
So you're still back in the Midwest.
Still back in the
And
Midwest.
somehow you made it out here to the West Coast.
Well, I was pastoring in Ohio, and I served on the National Home Missions Board in Springfield, Missouri, Home Missions, and then we meet twice a year. And this
This is with our fellowship with the Assemblies of God.
with the Assemblies of God.
All right.
And what happened was, I was going to the meeting. I wasn't going to go to the meeting at first,
All right.
because I just didn't feel like going. I just didn't feel like going. They covered everything. And so they called me and said, "Willie, are you coming to the meeting? We haven't got any information that you're coming." I said, "Yes, I'm coming." so I wasn't, but it was divine by God. When I got there, they started talking about the state of the ministries, the different ministries, chaplain ministry, prison ministry, Royal Rangers ministry, the whole bit. And they mentioned another ministry, and it just rung a chord in my spirit. I said, okay. I believe God was moving me to another assignment, did not know where. And so when that came up, I talked to Jim about it, and he shared with me what was going on and where it was at in the Pacific Northwest. I had never been to Seattle before, and had no desire to be to Seattle, come to Seattle, just thought about rain all the time, just no desire. But at any rate, that's what took place there.
So is that the ministry that you moved from?
I was
pastoring?
I was pastoring in Ohio.
Yeah, right.
Then I came to do Teen Challenge Ministry.
Right.
In Seattle, to reestablish that after 13 year after absence. Yeah.
Now you're married.
Married.
And children?
2 children, 2
How
grown
old are
children.
they?
Our son just turned 33
Yeah.
July 8th, last week, and our daughter will be 35 September 12th.
Any grandbabies in there?
We got one grandson.
Oh, good for you.
Jaden just turned 10 years of age, March 1st.
You know, working in the Bread of Life mission, you've got to have some stories of how the gospel has worked in people's lives, and you've watched that.
Oh, there's so many of those gentlemen that come to mind. They were sleeping on the streets. I recall this one gentleman sleeping on the streets, moved from, I can't remember where, we moved from another state out here, and just got involved with drugs and came into mission, stayed a few nights in the mission. Then he found out about our Life Change program, which is an 8 to 12 month Christian discipleship program. He came to be a part of that, and the Lord just got his hook in his jaw and saved him and changed him. And so those are That's a good story.
Yeah.
That a guy came and just totally out of it.
You got to sense that the road that Jesus took you out of has been one that a lot of people that you're working with can relate.
To be able to share that story, because I'm very transparent with the guys, very transparent. This is where I was at, this is where I'm at today, and it's only by the grace of God, because I should have been dead a long time ago, shot at several times, overdosed on heroin 4 times, and I'm able to stand up straight and not be horizontal.
You said you were shot at several times?
Shot at several times.
Let's talk about that, about what's going on in our country right now.
Yeah.
The shootings that have happened, the unfortunate possibility of even more in the future.
Yeah.
What happens to your heart when you hear about that?
It's just so crushing. It's just so crushing. I think there's just a huge divide in our country right now. I was looking at reading an article on CNN. They said, where does America go from here? Who can lead us? And when all this happened, most recently in Minneapolis, there in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and Dallas, Texas, the men and women in blue. It's just heart-wrenching. It's just heart-wrenching. And then the aftermath of what's happening with a lot of the protests, and I understand that. I get a lot of that. But I believe there's only one person that can really bring us together, and that's Christ. The gospel makes a difference. It made a difference in my life to stop me from wanting to steal and hurt people and rip people off and shoot people when people shoot at me. The gospel makes a difference. And
help me understand how a white man and a black man can sit here and talk about Jesus and how we can help our community. We may not change the world. This conversation may not have a ripple effect across the nation, but we can do something. If you were sitting here with 15, 20 pastors or 50 pastors, what would you encourage them to do? How would you encourage them to pray? What action could other leaders take in the Christian community to help bridge a gap?
I think one of the ways bridging the gap is getting involved. Getting involved with people that are different from you. I think that's a good way to start. Good opportunities to volunteer.
Okay, that's uncomfortable. I know that's the right answer. I get that.
Yeah.
But let's drill down on that. Let's put some pressure on that. That's uncomfortable. How do I get past that? And to hold on to my own comfort is actually pretty selfish. How do I get past the selfishness of wanting to maintain my own comfort so that I can reach out to my brother? I think this is the heart of the Good Samaritan story. How do we do that? Encourage me to take the next step.
I think it's relationship building. I think it's just going beyond. Many times we've seen it happen in different ministries. I'll send money, but I won't send myself. I'll give money, but I won't give myself. I think it's a conversation. It's sitting down, talking to people that are different from what we are, and realizing that we can make a difference. We can make a difference. A person does not have to be on drugs to really reach a drug addict. We have people volunteer at the mission. They do classes for us. They don't have that experience, but they're effective with the guys because guys, they care. They're concerned. They come down on their own dime. They come down to share, pray with us, talk. So I think we need to be very intentional. I think that's a good word, intentional. Because if we don't, we're going to, unfortunately, I think things are going to get worse before they become better.
Yeah.
That's just but because we know Christ, we can make a difference. And that's one life at a time.
And we can begin to do that right now.
Yes.
If we had all kinds of different ethnic leaders just choosing to spend time together and then being seen together in public, having our churches worship together, doing communion services between leadership teams together. I mean, there's a lot of different ideas that can just bring people together with Jesus is at the center.
Absolutely.
I think that's incredibly important.
It is. He makes a difference. We look at, so when all this took place, I do like a morning motivation with our
when
team.
all the shootings took place?
When all this took place, exactly, just recently, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And so on Mondays, I do a morning motivation with our team, with the Life Change guys, with the resident volunteers. And so God gave me a very familiar passage where I said, Lord, there's so much hurt in our nation, in the country. I said, give me a word for our setting today, our group. And the Lord gave me a very familiar passage of scripture, John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave, he bankrupt heaven, his only begotten Son. Whosoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. And when I saw from that passage, Don, that it's not black lives matter, it's all lives matter. But beyond that, I saw that my life matters. And so I was able to bring that in perspective and make it relative to each and every one of us, that we not carry that hurt around because someone of a different skin color, hue color, has done me wrong or done someone wrong that I know, because we get no better. We won't become better like that. We become bitter. And that's what's happening there. We become bitter, and we need to become better. In life situations, in the middle of life, life happens. Joseph became better, not bitter. And I think that we look at, if I was the only person down here on earth, God would have died, sent his Son Jesus died for me, bankrupt heaven. And we have to see it through the eyes, and we have to see it through the eyes of God. And we need to have new lens and begin to see the world as God sees the world. We're people. We're people with a soul. We're people that need Christ, and people matter.